Once a symbol of California's thriving natural environment, now every year, tens of millions of salmon are raised at hatcheries. These baby salmon are embarking on a perilous journey, all the way out to the Golden Gate. Releasing these fish, 800,000 of them at this spot alone, is one small part of an intensive effort to boost dwindling populations of threatened native fish. But there's a harsh reality. The vast majority will die making the trip.
There's long been an acknowledgement in the scientific community that our survival of our native species, specifically salmonids, is extremely low. Along the whole West Coast, we have some of the lowest survival of any of those populations.
A lot of those salmon that are trying to make it out to the ocean are not making it to the ocean. The cycle is broken.
Well, I think what we've tried is not working. Seems like we keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Historically, we've tried to manage flows, so releases from reservoirs. And oftentimes the focus is on more flow, alter pumping rates in the delta, knobs that we can quickly and easily turn, but we still continue to see this persistent decline in native populations.
30 years of this experience and it hasn't done anything. So maybe we're making a mistake, and maybe we better reevaluate what we look at and how we deal with it.
Scientists are looking in a different direction. Non-native predator fish preying on native species. Of all the factors known to impact salmon abundance and survival, habitat, flows, harvest, and hatcheries, predation by non-native fish is the problem that has received comparatively little attention and is least understood, a missed opportunity.
We should be looking at all options on the table.
We're not getting there. So let's keep looking where we haven't been looking.
The heart of California's water supply, the sprawling Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, serves as a lifeline for 2/3 of the state's population, for our economy and our quality of life. This delicate ecosystem is struggling. Salmon and steelhead, two of the driving forces behind the region's water management, are in decline, and long-held dynamics are shifting.
So historically, we would see, for example, with salmon populations in the San Joaquin, this boom and bust cycle where we would get flood years and we would see high returns of salmon 2.5 years later. We would get drought years, we would see low returns. That relationship is almost non-existent now. If anything, it's flattened or declined.
It's also true that native fish have lost the habitats and food webs they adapted to. Today, they exist in a highly altered, unnatural environment reshaped by dams and levees generations ago.
The entire delta was a large estuary, and what we're seeing today is the system that all the primary spawning areas are blocked by dams. You have heavily altered channels, riprap channels. You're essentially kind of putting these fish out into a water conveyance system. And although there's a lot of efforts to restore that habitat, the estuary itself has probably lost 90% of its wetland areas. And so we're putting fish into a very unnatural environment now.
Widespread habitat restoration efforts are ongoing. Other important factors, hatchery production and salmon harvest, have remained relatively stable, and yet salmon populations keep dropping.
The fact that that's still continuing, even though we've taken these actions, suggests that something else is having a much greater influence.
Just south of the Delta, researchers are focusing on what could be a missing piece of the puzzle.
We're looking to fill knowledge gaps regarding distribution, abundance of non-native species that are highly prevalent and abundant in the Delta, but seldom have they been the subject of research.
198.
New fish.
Now, scientists are quantifying the abundance of non-native fish that dominate the Delta. Native fish have become extremely rare, like finding a needle in a haystack, impacted by non-native fish through competition and predation.
Striper.
At this point, we've seen approximately 1% native species of all the fish we've caught. And we're talking, thousands and thousands of fish that we've netted, put in the live well, counted, put back. 1% of those are native species.
how did non-native fish get here in the first place?
We put them there. And I say we, the collective we as humans. You know, back years ago, in the case of striped bass in the late 1800s, there were fish that were trucked by rail car from the East Coast out to the San Francisco Bay and were planted. Maybe a couple hundred fish. That introduction soon exploded into a thriving commercial fishery.
Other fish have come probably different routes. Some of these fish could have come from ballast water releases in the old days. Yeah, they're there now. So yeah, the fish are there now. So.
Nearly 150 years and many species later, there remain several critical unknowns. How many non-native predators are there in the system? How do they respond to flow and habitat conditions? And perhaps most importantly, how many native fish are they eating?
It's difficult to study, and it's difficult to manage for, and so predation has often been kind of overlooked in favor of these other mechanisms that we can manage for easier. But, you know, understanding the causes of this mortality of the salmonids is incredibly important if we're going to do anything to increase the populations.
Largemouth.
There's really two components to the study. One is the operation of wire fyke traps. So these are large cylindrical traps that sit in the water, and as striped bass move upstream, they're captured in these traps, and we can roll them up on the banks and pull the fish out. We have a boat that's equipped with arrays that deliver an electrical charge into the water that stuns the fish. We're able to collect them.
And we're capturing the predators. We'll identify them to species. We measure their length.
453.
And then we also pump their stomach to see what they're eating.
They get inserted with external tags, with internal tags. All those tags have a unique ID code. We're able to track those fish through the rest of their life.
3133.
And then when we go back and sample those units again and we recapture those fish, we're able to estimate the abundance of those fish in those units and then can scale that up to more of a region-wide estimate of abundance.
This study was a little bit unusual in that we were approached by Banda Carbona, Patterson, and the West Stanislaus irrigation districts collectively with kind of a desire to do something proactive. I think, which is unusual. A lot of folks would do this type of research because they're required to. These guys wanted to do something to steward these natural resources to improve the ecosystem overall in California.
We need better science, better data, and this is one of the efforts to get better science and better data to help support any actions that we need to do.
And that's why, districts like ours, we came together and said, hey, if we're going to make any meaningful decisions in the future from a water management perspective, we got to have this information.
You don't see it on anybody's pie chart. They talk about habitat and flows. So we want to find out, is there predation out there? Are there numbers that could be impacting endangered species? But we don't know until we have the numbers, and that's what our study is about.
Well, this study of Delta fish life is no recent thing, I might add. It's been conducted intensively since 1960. It started back in the 50s, and it continues to this day.
We've been studying this for generations, and only now is a clearer picture beginning to emerge about what could be a missing piece of the puzzle. Non-native predators are everywhere. Black bass are found everywhere sampled, and striped bass have been tagged and tracked in the Delta, the San Joaquin River, to the northern reaches of the Sacramento River, and in the San Francisco Bay, and out into the ocean, as far south as Monterey Bay.
We're estimating that there's at least 10,000 black bass in the study area, and striped bass are probably an order of magnitude higher based on our initial findings.
When you have that many fish that aren't native to California, they're competing for resources, food, space, habitat, and they're also eating other fish.
Initial findings point to a significant watershed-wide impact. In most years, non-native predators have the potential to consume all salmon produced, often before they even reach the San Joaquin River or the Delta. Another study on the Stanislaus River indicates non-native predators are eating more than half of out-migrating juvenile salmon, even under ideal conditions, high flows and low temperatures.
We know if salmon are in the environment, they're getting consumed. Last year's survival estimates from the San Joaquin River were actually 0. None of the tagged fish survived, so we know these fish are having a hard time.
These fish populations, once so abundant, may be nearing a tipping point.
This state historically supported some of the biggest runs along the entire West Coast. California was a salmon state. It fed the native people. Generations of fishermen have fished for salmon. I think what's at stake here is the future of our salmon population.
State is not seeing a lot of salmon because of the drought, of all things, and it's now getting ready to issue a fishing ban along the entire West Coast.
Boats stacked up in the harbor at Fisherman's Wharf. Fishers who operate them with hopes of catching salmon won't be able to do so this year. It's only the second time in history that's happened.
We just keep waiting for things to get better, and they seem to just be getting worse.
The cancellation of California's salmon season is yet another stark reminder of the need to carefully balance the state's water supply in the face of increasing environmental pressures and extreme weather swings, from historic drought one year to record-setting rain and snowfall the next.
And so wise use of our water, balancing our water resources, making sure that we're meeting the needs of people and the economy, while at the same time meeting the needs of healthy ecosystems. We need a better understanding of how to maintain those healthy ecosystems, in particular in a highly invaded delta, where 95% plus of the fish are non-native species.
My hope is that there's more of a general acknowledgement across both the scientific and the management community of how much of an issue that predation is, or at least an acknowledgement that it's something that's worthy of study and worthy of understanding.
Ultimately, we should pay a lot more attention to the predatory species in our waterways and our ecosystem. They have a much larger impact than what people assume.
There doesn't seem to be any active effort to address those issues and how to deal with them. Let's get more brilliant minds looking at it.
Helping the babies get out to the ocean so they can grow up to become big salmon and come back.